Sometimes clarity comes at a very heavy cost, particularly when it appears that some places are being favoured more than others. But what about us becomes the plaintive cry, doesn't it? Now, clearly this is difficult stuff for our politicians, and it creates tensions between and within political parties. Instead of not in my backyard, HS2, wind farms, fracking, it's why not in my backyard? And it's not just politicians. Business will also react if it thinks it's being excluded or ignored. So what do? Well, let's create the Midlands engine. Let's create the Norfolk camshaft. Let's embrace every nook and cranny in the north and spread the love. Let's not. Tonight I'll try and deconstruct what the Northern Powerhouse brand actually is and what it has become, and take us right back to basics. There is real confusion between devolution and the Northern Powerhouse, and my goodness, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard that this evening. And that's amongst our citizens, our businesses, our politicians, and within the media. Let me use the analogy of the local enterprise partnerships. No one really understands what they are and what they do. I see them as useful advisory bodies to the public sector, but let's not pretend they're an integral part of local governance structures. This just creates confusion. Similarly, I've been asked by the press about the credibility of a Northern Powerhouse that allows our steel mills to close. I've been asked about the move of the Royal Photographic Collection from the National Media Museum in Bradford to the V&A as a triumph of metropolitanism, but surely not a failure of the Powerhouse. The Manchester Evening News ran an article in early February, and it was the reasons why the Northern Powerhouse is starting to feel like an empty slogan. Goes something like this: because Surrey doesn't need more money, we do. Well, I don't think that's the immediate fault or responsibility of the idea of what the Powerhouse is. The Department of Business, was shifting 200 jobs from London to Sheffield. Fine, that's not good, but it's not relevant to this conversation because it's more than building stuff. Yes, it is. Unfair cuts are being made to the North's frontline services. Yes, they are. But don't just set this all off against this different thing. There are big problems, but that does not stop us ambitiously investing in the infrastructure that will improve our economic growth. As you can see from these examples, the brand becomes associated with failures that it has nothing whatsoever to do with. The inequalities between the north and south of the country, between the north and south of Greater Manchester, and within the wider north are real. We know that. Devolution and public sector reform is faced with a monumental task of using dwindling public finances more effectively and address these deep-rooted problems from a local perspective. Any lack of progress can't be battered off just to the failure of the Northern Powerhouse. The role of this powerhouse should be to become a vehicle to better connect our key cities in this area and to transform our economic growth. Simple but ambitious. Huge investments in the Victoria Line, the Jubilee Line, the Dockland Light Railway and Crossrail has served the growth of London pretty well. Read Mike Emmerich's excellent Northern Brew blog if you want to learn a bit more about that stuff. It's excellent. The great strength of the original Powerhouse initiative was the clarity of purpose and vision. How can we create a greater London urban system with a scale to compete globally outside of the capital? The size of the local, regional and national gain if the cluster of cities in the northwestern Yorkshire can be better connected. Manchester and Leeds, but also Liverpool and Sheffield and the other surrounding towns. So well connected that we create a single, enlarged, flexible and dynamic labour market. The individual city brands and distinctiveness remain a key competitive strength. The goal and the transformation is the connectivity. This was never about the whole of the North, and the rising white noise of what about us has undermined the initial vision as its principles are now being applied to the whole of the North and beyond. Over the last 20 months, we've been unequivocal about the importance of making sure that people understand what the Powerhouse is and what's needed to make it happen. Let me just briefly return to Osborne's speech, which you've heard quoted a lot tonight, back in June 14. The cities of the North are individually strong. That's possibly debatable, but collectively not strong enough. The whole is less than some of its parts. So the Powerhouse of London dominates more and more. And that's not healthy for our economy. We know that. It's not good for the country. We know that. We need a Northern Powerhouse too. Not one city, but a collection of northern cities sufficiently close to each other that they can combine to take on the world. sufficiently close. In this speech and the one that's followed from Osborne, Cameron and Jim O'Neill, there was a repeated focus on the key 40-mile radius of Manchester, the magic 40 miles. That's the Central Line in London, ladies and gentlemen. That's Cockfosters to Heathrow on the Piccadilly Line, ladies and gentlemen. Why can't our connectivity be as good as that? That's also the distance of the average commute into London, if you don't happen to live in the capital. This area covers around a 290 billion economy, 10 million population, 24, 25 universities, whatever. Underpinned by powerful new city governance and bring on the mayors, and there's huge debates about this, but this has scale. But let's be absolutely clear. The ambition is not about rebalancing the economy, it's about a more balanced approach to economic development. It's a very important starting point, but let's keep the ambition realistic or credible, or credibility and hope will vaporise. The government's ambition to increase the value of our exports to $1 trillion by 2020 provides a fine example of fanciful targets that undermine the prime objective. Within weeks of the original Powerhouse speech, we started to have mission creep as people started to hitch their wagons to the Powerhouse and the brand began to get stretched out of shape. So every single policy aimed at the North was hijack the brand, and politicians and officials became increasingly determined that nowhere and nothing would be left behind. The alternative new beige generic approach has the potential to achieve very little. Most of us here tonight will recall the Northern Way and how it turned to dust because it lost its focus. Transport for the North makes sense, but many of the often new emerging initiatives don't. Do we really want to create governance structures across the North and turn an initiative into an organisation? Why would we do that? Does the addition of Northern Powerhouse branding to a trade mission to Malaysia and Singapore add value? I don't think so. Do we really need a Northern Powerhouse branded investment fund? Again, great to have it. What's the additionality of the brand? Let me return to the fundamentals. There's an important difference between devolution and Northern Powerhouse. 15 to 20 years' work went into winning Greater Manchester Devolution Agreement, and it was hard won and deserved and wasn't just given to us by government. These two concepts are connected, but they are different. Key cities need to be better connected, devolved or non-devolved. It doesn't matter. The key investment will focus on the hotspot 40-mile radius of Manchester. Our job is to ensure this happens. What happens elsewhere is of secondary importance. If there is no connectivity, the rest is just words and wishful thinking. Skills and energy policy can be part of this, but caution must be exercised. The devolution of skills budgets is piecemeal, and there are huge mismatches between the rhetoric of devolution and government policy. And as I said earlier, the nationalisation of schools and apprenticeships and the reform of FE without looking at the schools that sit in front of them. It's clear that devolution needs to deliver greater even-handedness across Greater Manchester, and you've heard that. This is not the key objective of the Northern Powerhouse. The former is about public sector reform, the latter transformational change that can accelerate economic growth. I repeat, they are connected, but they are different. The Northern Powerhouse, ladies and gentlemen, must not become a panacea for every problem, gripe, inequality, initiative and political ambition in the North. An initiative that delivers ambitious infrastructure investment between, say, Leeds and Manchester must be welcomed. It will not put right the inequalities of the past in terms of where investment's been made, but it is perhaps the start of a more balanced, less one-eyed approach to economic development in a country that has been hopelessly over-centralised, both politically and economically. If we pull this off, it will make a profound difference to how our economy works and performs in this area. This will then benefit more of our citizens. It cannot be held accountable for the problems created by the North-South divide that devolution and public sector reform is now trying to address. Doing it will surely make things better and will certainly not contribute to the continuation of a powerhouse. Please, please, please vote against the motion. Thank you.